Hey there guys, I'm back to another video. Today I'm doing something a little different, something I have not done in a very long time. I'm doing a figure review. Today I will be taking a look at the Sonic the Hedgehog 3-pack featuring Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles along with some accessory Chao by TOMY. So to those that don't know, the Sonic the Hedgehog figure license has been handled by TOMY for the past couple of years. They've been doing Sonic Boom merchandise for the longest time until they released the 25th anniversary Classic Sonic lineup featuring Classic Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles in many different packaging, but now they're tackling the modern Sonic stuff, and this is the first time I've ever gotten a chance to finally look at these figures in depth because they did release a modern Sonic and Knuckles comic book pack with their classic figures as well, but I wasn't a huge fan of that because I don't want another classic Sonic and classic Knuckles in my collection, so I kind of just waited for them to re-release those figures once again in a different pack, which they did in this one. So without further ado, let me go and dive into what I will be looking at within this video in terms of the review. So first up, I will be looking at the packaging, then I will be looking at the figures themselves in terms of the sculpt, the articulation, and then I will be comparing them into the classic TOMY figures, and then also with the modern Sonic Jazz Warriors figures, which were the last real modern Sonic 3-inch figures of this scale. So I will be comparing these figures to those two, and then I will conclude this video by giving you guys my pros and cons on these figures, along with the price point and then where you can buy them potentially. So first, let's dive right into the packaging for these figures. So this 3-pack is very nicely packaged. I think everything that TOMY has been doing with the classic and modern Sonic figures has been great and awesome, just because it's just very simple, it's very stylish, and really does pop out when you do go to the toy store, Target, whatever you may find these figures at. These just pop up instantly because of the color of these characters along with the packaging itself. So they have been keeping the style of the sort of blocky shape along with the usual naming of the characters in the front, the Sonic the Hedgehog logo right on the top there, ages 4 and up, and the TOMY logo right on the side. When you flip it to the right or the left side of the box, it's sort of more of the same. Then on the back, there's usually a stock photo of the characters featured in the figure pack, along with a brief description in many different languages. If you would like to read that, here is the English version of that description, pretty much summing up as to who Sonic is and what he's been doing for the past couple of years. If you flip it back to the side, it's more of like the other side, and then we get back right to the front with the big, nice open window. So let's just dive right into the review by looking at these figures more in depth. Now that I have the figures out of the box, let's take a closer look at them in detail, starting off with the sculpt. Starting off with our favorite blue hedgehog, Sonic. The sculpt for Sonic, he is pretty much all around really well done. Nothing I could really complain about this figure in terms of the sculpt. Everything about the proportions on him is really nice. It looks like a modern Sonic figure that TOMY made. For example, the head sculpt in terms of being proportioned, the quills on his back are nicely done. They aren't too long nor are they too short, and also they are pretty much done the same exact way that all of the other Sonic figures have been done up to this point. The ears as well, they are very nice. They aren't exactly too big nor are they too small, and they are distanced evenly from each other. On top of that, the arms and legs, I feel like that they are at a nice length. The legs I don't feel are too long or too short. I think that they are just right, along with the arms themselves. Same thing about that. And then obviously the hands and feet, the hands are in a closed fist sort of thing, so they aren't exactly, the most marvelous thing to see at, but they kind of just get the job done, I would say. And then his shoes, the nice belt buckle down there is prominent, along with the socks and all that good stuff. So overall, the sculpt for Sonic the Hedgehog, I think, is done pretty good, and kudos to TOMY for getting that right. My only complaint with the sculpt, I would say, is that the mouth, I only mention it now because I'm talking about the cons of this, but the mouth it's kind of there, but it's not necessarily prominent, I would say. When you look at a bunch of other Sonic figures, the mouth is very, the smirk, I should say, is very prominent, but this figure, it's sort of like, it's kind of there, but not really, so I wish that they made that a lot more distinct. Next up we have is Tails, and in my opinion I think that Tails could have been done a lot better. For one thing, you probably saw earlier, but Tails is really short compared to Sonic and Knuckles. I know that he is supposed to be shorter compared to them, but he's not supposed to be like this shorter. Like, come on, like he is literally like an inch apart from Sonic, or maybe like half an inch or something like that. Like he is really short when compared to Sonic and Knuckles. I wish that he was made a little bit taller. I think that his legs are really long for like no reason, and like his belly sort of like cuts off just to make room for the legs, which is a little weird, especially since Tails' design is a little bit different compared to Sonic and Knuckles. I guess that the way that TOMY had been designing these modern figures all this time, it kind of fell through with Tails and didn't exactly work as well, which you can definitely see within the sculpt of Tails himself. When it comes to the head sculpt, I think that it is a really nice Tails head sculpt. You know, he has the open mouth, he is obviously showing that he is happy. The ears, the bangs, everything like that, the whiskers, I think it is all great and perfect. Nothing really wrong there. Even like the hand poses that he has a open hand pose for whatever reason to hold whatever, you know, like a walkie-talkie or something like that. I have no idea, but there are no accessories with this figure, so I have no idea why he would have a open hand like this to show that he is, you know, grabbing something. And then the one pointing figure I think works well with Tails. You know, he's like Eureka, or, you know, I got it, or something like that, you know. So I think that this pose definitely works for him. These shoes are pretty basic, you know, they aren't exactly all that glamorous, but the tails themselves, they're okay. They don't move, they're kind of just stuck together and they don't do much, but make sure that Tails does not fall despite his legs actually making sure that he just stays up just right. But the tails on the back of him just ensure that he doesn't fall over. But overall, I think the sculpt and the entire figure as a whole is a little bit defeated just because of how short he is and how the legs were done and all of the proportions of his body just in general. I feel like that they could have done a much better job with this figure, and unfortunately TOMY fell flat or fell short on that end. The third main figure here is Knuckles. Just like Sonic, I have nothing much to complain about other than the fact that, I mean, his mouth is a little bit more prominent, but still, you know, with the way that his head is shaped and everything like that, it can be a little difficult to go and see that little smirk of his at the bottom. But everything else, you know, the pros, like, they got everything right when it comes to making a modern Knuckles figure. The proportions are all right. The sculpting of his fist with the brass knuckles at the end, the shoes with like the little Lego pieces on there are done great. Even like his tail, the way it's supposed to angle like that and be all, you know, like kind of long but not exactly, you know, like too long. And his dreadlocks, everything about this figure when it comes to the sculpt, I think is done really well. And props to TOMY once again, just like with the Sonic figure, making a fantastic modern Knuckles figure. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people out there that actually just bought this pack for the Chao right here. So let's go and take a look at them individually. But pretty much, they are just little pieces of blue plastic with a couple of, I don't know exactly what to call them, but they have, you know, like little faces on there that aren't necessarily painted on. They're kind of like stickers, but a little bit more permanent than that. But yeah, they're just one solid clear blue sort of plastic thing. And, you know, that's fine, especially since for a accessory like this, I don't need them to be all that extravagant, but it would have been nice for them to be, you know, painted a little bit differently or something like that. But, you know, these are pretty much just accessories for this trio pack, and I think that they went with a pretty good theme of having each Chao have like a different face and stuff like that, and have like a slightly different body compared to each other. So I definitely do give props to TOMY for doing something a little bit different other than just the face of each Chao. So props to them for doing that. Alright, so let's get into the articulation for these figures. So, one thing that I think TOMY has a lot when it comes to the Sonic figures is that they don't have a lot of articulation. Point example, Sonic. So he can move his head just a little bit. I don't want to move it too much, but that's as much movement as you'll probably get with the figure, just sort of like a little bit of left and right action. You can move his arms up and down and left and right. It's on a ball joint. On both sides. There is no wrist movement, unfortunately, so you can't get dynamic poses or anything like that, and his legs literally just move forward and backward, nothing else. It's on a swivel sort of joint, I believe, so, and his ankles don't move as well. So once again, like I said, TOMY figures are not exactly best for articulation, but they do look really nice in terms of figures, and that articulation for Sonic is pretty much prominent within the rest of the figures. So, you know, Tails is kind of just the same. You know, you can move his head, actually a lot more. You can move his arms up and down, left and right, and his feet just move forwards and kind of backwards. His tails restrict him from moving it all the way back. And then when it comes to Knuckles, you actually can't move his head at all because his arms are kind of like restricting him from that movement, but you can move his arms up and down, but up and down to the side, but not exactly up and down in front of him because of his dreadlocks, and then his legs just move up and down in the same motion that Sonic and Tails did. And then the Chao, they have no articulation themselves, but they still look pretty cool. Okay, so now it is comparison time. I'm comparing these figures to the metallic, shiny Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles classic versions of themselves, and you can see that the proportions to their classic counterparts are pretty much what you would expect. Sonic and Knuckles, the modern figures, are a lot taller than their classic counterparts, while the classic Tails and modern Tails are pretty much around the same exact height, which I don't think is how it should be. I think modern Tails should be a little bit bigger, especially since what we have seen within the games like Sonic Generations. So overall, I think that comparing these figures to TOMY's past classic figures, I think that they did everything that they could in terms of Sonic and Knuckles. Once again, I think that Tails as a figure right now fell a little bit short. And now comparing these TOMY figures to the Jazzwares figures, these Jazzwares figures look great still. When it comes to the sculpt, I think that Sonic and Knuckles are definitely on par with the Jazzwares figures. When it comes to Tails, not so much. When it comes to like the proportions and all that stuff, I think that TOMY's version of modern Tails just falls flat on its face just because of how short he is and the proportions of his legs and all that stuff like that. But when it comes to articulation, Jazzwares just wins 100% within that department because of the elbow joints, the wrist and ankle swivels that you got there, actual full range of head movement. Even for Knuckles, like you can move these dreadlocks a little bit and you can move his head a lot more than what this TOMY figure can do right now. So overall, I still find that the Jazzwares figures to be a lot better, but I'm not saying that these TOMY figures are necessarily complete garbage either. So what are my final thoughts on these figures? Alright, so let's dive right into the pros first. The pros for these figures as a whole, I love the Chao accessory. I love that they decided to include them in this little 3-pack to give a little bit of a incentive to those Sonic collectors who have already bought these figures in the past in a different pack or whatever, you know, just a little bit of an extra boost for them to be like, hey, I want these Chao figures, but I need to buy the whole 3-pack, so I guess I'm gonna buy the whole 3-pack. The sculpts for modern Sonic and modern Knuckles, they are great, they are fantastic. From head to toe, there is not really an issue I have with them, other than the fact that their mouths are a little bit not exactly prominent as they are like within Tails. Tails, when it comes to his pros, I think that the head sculpt for him is fantastic. I love it. But when it comes to the cons, I guess we could dive right into those now. Tails as a figure as a whole for this 3-pack really falls flat on his face. I mean, just looking at the height of this figure, he is not supposed to be this short and his legs are not supposed to be that long. So there is definitely proportional issues within this figure in and of itself, along with his proportions compared to Sonic and Knuckles. The Chao figures, the only con that I really have for them is that they're kind of just like one big one big piece of plastic with just like really high quality stickers as their faces. So if you are going to use these figures a lot in terms of like playing with them and stuff like that, I could definitely see that the faces may fade away eventually. But if you're using these as collector items, that might not be a problem necessarily. I think that's about it in terms of the pros and cons. But overall, I think that this 3-pack is pretty good. Like, they are really nice display figures just to have like on your shelf or on your desk or whatever. You know, like these figures are really nice display pieces. But when it comes to like actually like playing with them or like posing them or doing like maybe a stop motion series or something like that, I think that these are definitely going to lack within that department. Price. What is the price point for this 3-pack? So personally, I purchased my 3-pack from Target and it retailed for $29.99. I did not expect that price point either, but when you're considering that you get 3 figures along with accessory Chao, I think it's not all that bad. If you want to purchase it from an online retailer, I believe Toy Wiz has these up for $24.99 at the moment. I have no idea where else they sell these at the moment. So yeah, pretty much Toy Wiz and Target are your best bets as to picking these figures up. But yeah, I think that is about it. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys have not already, you can subscribe. I put new videos up every single Saturday. You want to follow my social media accounts, Facebook and Twitter, you can do that as well. I live stream every single Sunday at 12 p.m. EST, so you can follow me on there, twitch.tv/tvsonicgaming. And I think that is about it. Thank you guys for watching this video once again, and I'll see you guys next time with more videos. Game on, gamers.